Hi everybody, it's John back with another model inbox review. Probably not a lot of need to introduce this aircraft, but for those of you who have no idea what it is, it's actually a Heinkel HE111H. And the H variant is the variant that I'll be doing an inbox review on, and I'll tell you which company it is when we go through the boxing history. But before I go through the boxing history, I want to show you a few photographs to give you an idea of why there are certain options and costs included in this particular inbox review. Um, the model that we're actually doing an inbox review on today is of an H series, but the H series was a later production variant of the HE111. The original military guise, as the aircraft was originally designed as an airliner or mail aircraft for German's national airline Lufthansa, but it always had military implications built into its design. The original aircraft was actually in a B variant, which came out during the Spanish Civil War. But before we go into that, I just wanted to show you the other option of the H variant that you can often get in model form, which is a turreted defensive armed H20 variant of the HE111, and this can be modelled either by a pretty crude and horrendous airfix kit, but also Italieri do a turreted armed one as well, which is also armed with I think an air-to-surface missile, which is quite interesting. But that's the H20 variant. But the Heinkel HE111 originally was released in this guise. The HE111As were actually the civilian variant, or rather this was the B variant, which was the military variant of the A variant. And as you can see, it has quite an extensively altered nose section. This was actually the original guise of the HE111, and it had quite a heavy framed forward nose section and a more conventional cockpit canopy arrangement with gondola and, if you like, mounting rings, gun installations top and bottom. The aircraft had quite extensively drooped radiators for the Junkers Jumbo engines that powered it in the early days. But that was the B variant, which was the first variant to enter service with the German Luftwaffe, and I think that entered service in around about 1934. Then in 1936 came the Civil War in Spain, and the Condor Legion was sent to Spain to evaluate certain aircraft types for the German Luftwaffe, and the HE111 was one of these. This is actually an HE111D in Nationalist Air Force markings, and you can see that it is basically an up-engined variant of the original HE111B. Interesting that the Spanish Civil War Spanish Air Force markings are quite different to the German markings, with a definite jet black disc here and the typical white fin flash with the black crosses, and these were repeated on the underside of the wings and the tops of the wings. A lot of these aircraft are painted in three different camo colours. They were like grey, light brown and green, but some of them were more typically light green and sometimes light tan as well, that served with the Spanish Air Force during the Civil War. But that's the HE111D variant. Then came another aircraft which was produced by CASA, and this aircraft was powered by Merlin engines. As you can see, the engine profile is very different. The CASA HE211 was also a mount used, as you can see in this form, to reenact German Luftwaffe Heinkel HE111s that served in the Luftwaffe, but they were actually Spanish aircraft serving the Spanish Air Force. But these featured in the 1969 war movie, The Battle of Britain. One of the biggest telltale differences between a CASA 211 and an HE111, apart from the engines, is the number of windows that go down the side of the fuselage. And also, this upper gunner position is slightly redesigned as well. But in the original German HE111, this middle window is definitely missing. It wasn't present on the German-built versions, powered by Junkers Gemmo 211 engines. Anyway, that's the Casa 211. You also had a glider tug variant in the HE111Z1 Zwilling. You can actually get model forms of these, as you'll see in the options and cost variants options as well in the Gumph that I'll read out later. But these particular kits tend to be quite dear. But the Zwilling was definitely a real aircraft and was used as a glider tug to tow the Messerschmitt Me323 gliders, the Gigants. The sprue colours that was originally released in 1975, which I think is a model that I've got a copy of, which is exactly the same as these sprue colours. They originally started off in this colour, and the boxing itself, which I'm pretty sure I've got an original 1975 release boxing of this HE111H from Matchbox. Yes, it's the Matchbox kit PK403 that I'll be building. This is the third model in the red range, and this was the original box artwork, and I've got a feeling that these aircraft are flying over somewhere in London, bombing the hell out of an oil works, probably in the docks somewhere in London during the Battle of Britain. One of the other interesting features of the Matchbox kit on the decals is that it gives you 3 stripes over the wings that go over here. These weren't theatre markings, they were actually denoting a wing leader in the squadron. So this aircraft is actually a wing leader from the squadron, which is quite nice. 1975 original release, went to 1977, and this is the second release kit. They changed the format of this area here, took the 1/72nd scale logo off of here and put it on the side of the box, and this is all written in black and grey now, with extra information stating it's a Luftwaffe multi-role medium bomber 3-colour kit in 72nd scale. So there we go. There's also information here which is also carried over from the first original boxing, which is quite nice. But that's the 77 release, Type 2 boxing of the Matchbox HE111H. Then in 1979, AMT joined up with Matchbox to release this kit in the American market, and they used the Eastern Front variant as the pictorial image on the front with different artwork. And this particular offering, this particular option is available in the Matchbox kit, as you'll see when we have a look at the colour guide. 1979 there goes through to 1983, and you've got a colour change to the sprue in this release as well. And Matchbox went over to the Eastern Front release artwork as well for the boxings there. You can see the decals as well have a different Air Forces markings here. These are actually Romanian markings for a Romanian Nationalist Air Force Heinkel HE111 that also served in the Eastern Front alongside the Luftwaffe counterparts. But you can see that there is definitely a colour change in the sprues here. You've got a green sprue and a black sprue here instead of a light and brown sprue. But the blue sprue is still common on this boxing as well. 1983 goes through to 1983 re-release. This is a re-release of the original box. The sprue colours were exactly the same, no difference whatsoever. It was released later in the year. 1983 again goes through to 1984, and this is the another sprue colour change, but this is when Revell started marketing Matchbox models, and they completely changed the box artwork, and they also went over to this quite striking black bordered box here with a slightly redesigned Matchbox logo, because the original Matchbox word written in the logo was in red, and in the Revell counterparts they were changed to black, so that you had the German national flag colours in the logo, which I always thought was a bit cheeky, really, wasn't it, when Matchbox was originally a British company. The sprue colour in a lot of these Revell releases was all one colour, and in the case of the Heinkel, it was all dark blue, as you can see. So that's 1994. 1994 saw another re-release later in the year. It was pretty much the same type of box. Also, I want to point out something about this little logo, because I had a subscriber left me a comment on one of my Matchbox model in-box reviews stating what the actual meaning of this symbol is. I thought it was something to do with a Revel logo applied to Matchbox boxings, but it's not. This symbol is actually, you can see it on a lot of Revel kits, and it's actually a recycled material logo, denoting the fact that the box is made predominantly of recycled cardboard. So there we go. That little green and white symbol, that's what it means. It means the box is made out of recycled cardboard. 1994 goes through to 2004, and Revel collaborated with a company called Alanga to release this kit in the Far Eastern market. I think Alanga is a South Korean company who released this aircraft kit in all over the Far East, and I think Revel actually put the money up to produce Alanga, or maybe they had a money stint in Alanga as a company to take a cut out of the sales for the Far Eastern market. Anyway, we'll leave you with a nice image here. This is a very typical image, and what's really interesting about this image is that this is the real aircraft that the Matchbox kit is based on. This is a Battle of Britain serving Luftwaffe Heinkel HE-111H6 serving, I think it's KG-53 during the Battle of Britain. And these aircraft were based in northern France, as you'll see very soon as well. We'll just bend the camera down to the box and have a look at this this really nice kit. I have built this kit once before. It's not a taxing kit to build, but it's very different from a lot of the other options that are available. This camera stand is, yeah, there we go, it's sorted. Anyway, the Matchbox kit, typical Red Range Matchbox kit. My hand over the front there, you can see it's quite a big box. I like the box artwork on the front of this. It's quite nice. This is an original 1975 release. You can tell that because all this information is in white, and it bears no information to tell you that the aircraft is a Luftwaffe variant. It says here, in September 5th, 1914, HE-111 aircraft of KG-53 Condor Legion, forming part of a combined force of 68 DO-17s and HE-111s, attacked oil tanks at Thames Shaven, inflicting considerable damage to this vital installation, only 3 Heinkels failing to return. So they had a pretty good success rate, didn't they, during the early stages of the Battle of Britain. What we'll do first of all, before we go into opening the box, I'll just show you there's a couple of images there. That's PK401, PK402. I've done in-box reviews and build projects on that. And then you've got an image of the aircraft as it would be built up with decals on straight out of the box. You can see there A1BT is exactly the same coding, serial codes as the image that I showed you there to close out. On the back you've got a paint guide showing the 3 different options that are available in this kit. You've got KG-53's Condor Legion, based at Lille in 1940. There's the Edelweiss Geschwader, which is an Eastern Front based HE-111H6. And then you've got the Romanian Air Force aircraft, which was based in Ukraine. Different camo pattern to the Luftwaffe variant. Interesting. It's an interesting camo pattern, actually. Quite like that. Lots of theatre markings there available. The only theatre colours for the Battle of Britain are the red spinners on the Heinkel HE-111. Some of them did have yellow engine cowlings to the undersides of the engine cowlings. And theatre markings for the Eastern Front are yellow tips to the wings. That was very common. And of course that would be carried over for the Ukrainian-based Romanian aircraft as well. Yellow tips to the wings underneath. Quite nice. You've also got a picture there showing you how the optional position stand works, but I don't think I've got the stand in this kit. And also, just for interest's sake, 85p in 1975. Maybe 1976. It was, you know, it was quite a cheap. Matchbox produced a pretty cheap kit, because I'm pretty sure when this kit was released, the Airfix Heinkel HE-111, which was Series 4, would have been 52p. maybe 59p later in the following year. Right, we'll have a look at those in a minute. First of all, I want to show you the instruction leaflet and the decals. I'll show you those in a minute because they're quite nice. The instruction leaflet is quite a large instruction leaflet, and it opens up, I think, into pretty much 2 packs of A3. That would be A2, wouldn't it? It's a pretty large instruction leaflet. On the front cover, as usual, you've got, because it's a red series kit, the instruction leaflet is written in red. You've got a red boss over the front there, and it's PK403, as you can see, HE111. It's a bit, somebody's written some scribbling on the front of there. That's a bit of a shame, but never mind. On the back, you've got some general instructions and some details and information about the HE111 in 4 or 5 different languages there. And you've also got how you construct the stand, which, as I said before, I'm pretty sure I haven't got in this kit. On the back page, you've got colour call-out. Trying to see what colourways there are for... Yeah, you've got... Some of the colours are actually marked there. But they're not the right colours. They're the Matchbox colours, which is a bit of a shame. But you can get conversions here and there quite easily. M23, I think that was Airfix colours, paint colours. On the left hand side of the top page here, you've also got a list of the other models that are available in the range. And as you can see here, in the red range, they only had 5. With the Phantom and the Mitchell B25H being the final 2 going up to PK404 and 405. But you've also got other lists here of different Matchbox kits available, and I always thought that was quite nice. You've got some hints and tips and paint guides to produce, painted parts before you assemble them or during assembly, which is quite nice. Options 1 and 2, you paint the pilots up in those colours. Option 3, you paint the pilot up in that colour, and then you've got different colour call-outs for different parts there, which is quite nice. Yeah, quite like that. The kit itself builds up in 9 stages, and typical Matchbox style, there's not a lot going on inside this kit. There's not a huge amount of detail. Basically, stage 1 and 2 is the mid-upper gunner and the interior cockpit detail, which comprises of 3 parts and 2 crew figures. There's not a lot going on there. Section 3 is the fuselage assembly. Again, there's not a lot going on there, is there? Not a huge amount. Section 4, you've got the forward canopy, what's often called the greenhouse. Can be a bit of a nightmare to put those 2 transparency parts together. There's actually 3 transparency parts to the canopy. Part 21 there is a solid plastic part. Section 5, you've got the tail empennage, all those parts going into there, quite easy. Section 6 is the engine, 2 engines on this kit, and the propellers will rotate, which is quite nice. A nice feature on this kit is that you've got the exhaust stacks here. They're a separate part, and I quite like that because it means you can paint the aircraft up, paint the exhaust stacks up, and then marry them after everything's been painted up, and you get it's a lot easier to paint the exhaust stacks and finish them like. It's quite nice. Section 7 is the main undercarriage oleos and wheels. Then you put the wings on in section 8, marry the engines to the wings and the mid-upper gunner transparency shroud there. That's quite nice. And then in section 9, you've just basically got the optional position undercarriage, which is quite good. If you have the aircraft in flying mode, you omit all of the undercarriage parts and just adhere the doors into place, which is quite easy. Also in section 9, you've got the lower gunner there, the gondola gunner, which is quite easy. So the part they put, there's quite a few parts, but they're not as much as what you would normally get in, say, an Airfix kit or a Talierai kit, something like that. The decals, typical Matchbox decals, and yep, you're going to be surprised about this. Typical Matchbox details, although these are from 1975, they still look in pretty good condition. The backing film hasn't yellowed at all. They look like they're pretty sound, and they'll probably lay pretty well. And yep, on the top right hand side there, just by the HE111 logo, you've got swash stickers. In 1975, 76, Matchbox still applied swash stickers to their models, and they were one of the last companies to relinquish this. So yeah, you've got swash stickers, that's quite nice. And there's those wing leader stripes that go on the wings, quite nice. Condor Legion logo there, that's included in the kit as well, which is quite nice. I like that very, very much. So there we go. Decals, very good. Transparency sprue. There is a part that's come off one of the sprues here. There's a couple of parts that's come off one of the sprues here. Unfortunately, it's not the transparency. We'll have a look at those when we look at the correct coloured sprues. Just put these back in here so I can keep them nice and not have them bend up, which is one of the worst things that can happen to transparent decals. Transparency sprue. Typical of Matchbox transparencies, these parts are actually very clear. They're crystal clear. In fact, there's no flash on them whatsoever, no distorted parts at all, and the frames are very defined. They'll paint up very, very nicely indeed. Even that forward gunner's glazing there with the aperture in the front, that's very nicely finished. And as you can see, you know, I put my finger, you can see my fingerprints through that. That's gonna show quite a lot of the interior detail quite nicely. The only issue I've got with this is that you're having to glue these two parts together before you apply them to the forward fuselage, which is a bit of a shame. There's also no interior instrument panel on the Matchbox kit, because the interior instrument panel was actually hung from the upper section of the canopy here. It hung from the top of the canopy, and Matchbox don't include that. The dark brown sprue, first of all, comprises a lot of the interior detail, the propellers, the bulkhead. Machine guns there on that side, they're quite nicely crafted. They're quite nice pieces of work actually. And you've got a crew figure there, he's the bomb aimer, quite nice. And then you've got these quite bereft of detail fuselage halves. There's no riveting on these whatsoever. They're pretty clean, flash free, typical of Matchbox. But the surface detail on these kits was pretty minimal, I'll be honest with you. The parts look quite reasonable. I'm quite happy with the parts. They look quite good. Let's put that one up in there, put that in the middle of that so it doesn't get crushed. Put that on top. We'll have a look at this sprue next, the blue one. Don't need to worry about that because we've got some of these on here. The wing surface detail, again, it's pretty bereft of rivets. There's not an awful lot going on there, but these lines are recessed. Yeah, they're recessed panel lines. Believe it or not, Matchbox were one of the first to produce recessed panel lines. Lower aerial there, that's the aerial that goes on the underside of the fuselage, and then you've got the undercarriage bays, which when these lower wing halves are married to the upper wing halves, they form the undercarriage wheel wells. Again, there's not an awful lot going on there. So, yeah, that's the blue sprue. The light brown sprue, this is one of the parts that came off. The guy who sold me this actually believed that this was broken, but it actually isn't. There's nothing wrong with that part whatsoever. It's the seat that forms the station for the mid-upper gunner, so that's quite nice. And then the light brown sprue with the rest of the parts on it, quite nice. Undercarriage oleo legs there, they're quite nicely cast actually, quite impressed with that. But the surface detail on the wings, it's pretty poor actually, isn't it? But it is recessed panel lines. The typical Matchbox flyers there, those guys, you find them in all the Matchbox kits. And the exhaust stacks there, they're pretty run-of-the-mill, they're not particularly well defined either. But they'll be alright when they're painted up, they'll be fine. Steering yoke, that's actually better than the one in the Airfix kit. Yep, there we go, better than the one in the Airfix kit. So anyway, that's the HE111's parts from Matchbox. As I said before, this is PK403. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put all this back together so that I can show you the box, so you've got something to look at whilst I'm reading the gump out. There are a few more options and costs on this kit because the HE111 is quite a popular modelling subject. But I need to warn you of a number of models that are on the market that really aren't they're not worth any money at all. One of them in particular, which I'll tell you about soon. Anyway, let's put that all back into there. That's sorted that. Instructions and decals on the top. There we go. Let's put that over. And that's a nice image there. So, the kit we're doing an inbox review on is the Matchbox Heinkel HE111H. It's moulded in 1/72nd scale, and it forms part of the red range with serial number PK403, and its original release date was 1975. There are decals for 3 versions: an HE111H6 from KG-53 Condor Legion, Luftflotte 2 German Luftwaffe based in Lille in 1940 during the Battle of Britain. The second is an HE111H6 from KG-51, the Edelweiss Geschwader of the German Luftwaffe based in the Eastern Front in 1943. And the third is an HE111H6 from Grupal 5, Romanian Corporal, number 1 Aryan serving the Romanian Air Force based in the Ukraine during March 1943. Now there are 22 parts on 1 dark brown sprue, 27 parts on 1 light brown sprue, 15 parts on 1 light blue sprue, and 7 parts on 1 transparent sprue, totaling 71 parts in total. The kit should measure about 9 inches long, it should have a wingspan of 13 inches, and it should sit about 2 inches high on its undercarriage. Now the options and costs, there are quite a number, but it is quite interesting to show you what is about. I've only included options and costs in 72nd scale because the model subject is 72nd scale. Now Airfix do a number of standalone kits. The original tooling of the HE111H20, which is it's an okay kit, but the cockpit canopy on it is pretty poor. The H20, of course, being the turreted mid-upper gunner position variant. That kit retails for anything between £15 and £70. Airfix also did a retool of the HE111H6 and P2, and these kits retail for anything between 25 and 45 quid. These kits are reputed to be some of the best 72nd scale HE111 models on the market. They are extremely good. Airfix also produced an old tool HE111 as part of the Battle of Britain set, comprising an HE111H20, a Spitfire Mark 1A, a Hurricane Mark 1 and a BF109E4. The E4 variant of the Messerschmitt is the older tool, as is the Spitfire Mark 1A and the Hurricane Mark 1. These retail for anything between £50 and £55. But Airfix also did a revamp. I think it was the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Britain, and this comprised the retool versions of all of the above aircraft: the HE111P2, the Spitfire Mark 1A, a Hurricane Mark 1 and a BF109E3. This kit retails for anything between £45 and £50. Airfix also produced an HE111H retool. This is the new toolkit, included in the Motorhead Bomber set, which included their vinyl album. And that retails for anything between 15 and 40 quid, depending on how greedy the person is, but you can usually get it for about 15 to 20 pound. Now Frog did a pretty poor HE111H, that retails for about 20 to 24 quid, and Hasegawa did a really nice HE111H6, and this retails for between 35 and 45 pound, but I must stress this kit is really nice when you consider that it was a 1980s release. Hasegawa also produced a tooling of the Z1 Zwilling version of the HE111, and that retails for anything between 40 and 45 pound. Italieri also produced Lindbergh produced an HE111, and it's so bad they can't even tell you what variant it is. That kit retails for anything between about 20 to 40 pound. Believe me, it's not worth a fiver. Lindbergh also produced a Legends of the Sky combat set comprising an HE111 and a P-47 Thunderbolt. This kit retails for between £45 and £60, and these two are really just collector's items now, I would have thought. The Matchbox release standalone kit of the HE111H retails for anything between 12 and 25 quid. And Rodan do a really nice set of offerings, boxings of the HE111A, B and C variants, and these retail for between 10 and 36 quid, but they are limited run kits and they're not an easy build, but they are very accurate and they're quite nice. Airfix Corporation of America retooled the original H20 early tool kit for about £10 to £35. Airfix by Craftmaster also repopped the H20 variant for £10 to £35. Airfix Gunzai repopped the HE111H20 early tool kit for about £10 to £35. And Alanga, they produced the reboxed Matchbox kit of the H6 for about 20 quid. Now Frog Penguin, they did a retool of the Frog kit of an HE111H, got no pricings on that, but Frog Penguin kits generally fetch about £100, they're quite rare. And Classic Plane, they produced an HE111, which is a reboxed Hasegawa kit, no pricings on that, but I do believe one went about 2 months ago on eBay for about 20 quid. Hobby produced an HE111 reboxed Hasegawa kit for about £29 to £33. Atelieri produced the reboxed Hasegawa kit for about £29 to £33. They also produced, Atelieri produced the Atelieri kit, not the reboxed Hasegawa kit. That's about 15 quid. Atelieri also produced an 80th anniversary Battler Britain HE111H6, which is a reboxed Atelieri kit for 25 quid. They also produced a Z1 Zwilling, which is a reboxed Atelieri kit for 25 to £62. And they also produced an H22 variant, which is a retooled and reboxed Atelieri kit for about £5 to £10. MPC produced the early tooling H20 by Airfix for about 25 to 35 quid. And Revell produced a plethora of repops, if you like, of an HE111H, which is the X-Frog kit, for about 30 quid. Don't bother with that one, that's terrible. They also produced a repop of the Hasegawa kit in an H6 for about £14 to £40. They also produced a Battler Britain set comprising an HE111H, a Ju-87B2, a Hurricane Mark 1 and a Spitfire Mark 1A. These are all... the Stuka, the Hurricane and the Spitfire are all the early toolings of those kits, but the HE111 is a reboxed Hasegawa kit. And apart from the HE111 and the Stuka, the other two are really quite poor. Atelieri Revell produced a reboxed Atelieri kit of the HE111H for about 15 to 30 quid. The Atelieri repop from Revell is £27, sorry about that. Revell Lodella and Revell Seji and Revell Kikola also produced reboxed Frog kits for between 15 and 30 quid. Testers Atelieri reproduced the Atelieri rebox for about 15 to 25 quid. And Zvezda also reboxed the Atelieri kit for about 10 to 30 quid. Conclusions. Being a Matchbox kit, you shouldn't expect too much in the way of detail, but that said, it does have a pretty faithful shape that appears to be really accurate. There are no panel lines anyway, except for the few recessed panel lines on the wings and a minor one on the fuselage, but not an awful lot going on in the way of surface detail. But the Matchbox kit's decals fare well for their age, and they have pretty good register. Overall, a must for any Matchbox collector and builder alike. I have built this kit before, and it was an enjoyable build. Recommended kits are the Hasegawa HE111H, the new tool Airfix HE111H, which are the two best toolings of an HE111 in 72nd scale, but steer clear of the Frog and the early Revell kits, as they are just reboxed Frog kits as well, and that really, really terrible offering from Limburg that's so bad, even they don't know what mark of HE111 it really is. The Rodan kits get pretty good praise too, but not as easy to build. But if you're after an early series HE111, they're the only ones on the market. So that's the inbox review finished. I hope this video has been of some use. Thanks for tuning in. If you've got any questions, queries, anything, just pop them in the comments box below this video, and I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. As I said, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you for the next one, and let's have fun out there. That's what it's all about. Bye bye for now.